Welcome back to Revise and Resubmit, the podcast that takes, those really dense academic papers and makes them surprisingly interesting. I'm Pavlov.
And I'm Nikita.
Wow, you guys. We hit 100 subscribers on Revise and Resubmit. To celebrate, we're debuting a brand new segment at the end of this deep dive, our first ever paper song. Stick around, you won't want to miss it. But first, let's get to the fascinating stuff you sent in, this research article about multinational corporations, or MNCs for short, and their involvement in sociopolitical activism, SPA. It really caught my eye. It's like this. Imagine a company as, like, a person with, strong opinions. Do they always act the same way? Stand up for the same things, no matter where they are? That's kind of what we're unpacking today. Essentially, SPA is when a company publicly supports or opposes a controversial issue, using words or actions, like climate change, racial justice, those kinds of things. So the big question is, why would a company take a stand on an issue at home, but stay silent or act differently on that same issue in another country? The article dives into some really relatable examples. Remember when Google and PwC were so vocal about racial justice in the US after George Floyd's murder? They were pretty quiet after a similar event sparked protests in Brazil. But on the flip side, they've consistently opposed anti-LGBTQ+ laws globally. Then there was Coca-Cola, which took a stand against racism in both the US and Brazil. The article calls this a consistent approach to SPA.
What's interesting here is that this activism might seem like traditional corporate social responsibility, or CSR, but it's a whole different ballgame. CSR is generally about doing good, being a responsible corporate citizen. But SPA wades into much more controversial waters, taking sides on issues that can really polarize people. And the pressure on companies, especially MNCs operating globally, to take a stand is only increasing.
That's a tough spot to be in, right?
Yeah.
Imagine believing in something strongly but speaking up in another place could be risky because, the rules or the popular opinion are totally different. What would you do?
It's a real dilemma, and the article offers a helpful framework to understand this tension. They call it institutional complexity, and break it down to 3 levels: within a host country, between the home and host countries, and beyond both.
Okay, so let's break it down, starting with within a host country.
This level highlights how strong disagreements among citizens or even between citizens and the government can make an MNC think twice about acting consistently with their home country stance. They have to weigh the potential backlash.
Like that Coca-Cola ad in Mexico that aimed to support indigenous people but ended up being seen as insensitive.
Exactly. It didn't resonate with the complex values and historical context surrounding the issue. Another example is Poland. There are complex and often conflicting views on LGBTQ+ rights there. Many Western companies that are vocal advocates at home choose to remain silent in Poland, fearing a negative reaction from some segments of the population.
So it's not just about following the law. It's about navigating the cultural landscape, too. Now, how about the second level between home and host countries?
This level emphasizes how the distance, you could say, between accepted values and laws in different countries can create inconsistency. What's considered normal or even expected in one country might be totally taboo in another. For example, Scandinavian companies are known for promoting women leaders, but replicating that in Japan, where traditional gender roles are more deeply ingrained, presents significant challenges. An Ernst & Young executive even said that adapting actions to the local context is crucial for global companies.
It makes sense, but doesn't that open the door for accusations of hypocrisy? It's like when BMW celebrated Pride in some countries but stayed silent in others. They faced a ton of criticism for that, being called out for, applying double standards. All right, let's dive into the third level, the most complex one beyond home and host countries. What makes this level so tricky?
At this level, MNCs have to consider not just the host and home countries, but also the actions of other countries in their network, as well as the influence of international organizations like the UN and NGOs like Greenpeace. It's a tangled web of global influence.
This is where it gets super interesting. The article mentioned the High Ambition Coalition pushing for environmental action and how Coca-Cola responded consistently across countries by reducing plastic waste. It shows how these coalitions can really drive change.
Absolutely. And consider the UN's role in promoting human rights. They collaborate with many MNCs on initiatives like gender equality, effectively setting a kind of global standard.
The power of these organizations is amazing. Remember the campaign against child labor in the chocolate industry? Pressure from NGOs really forced companies to clean up their act and take a consistent stance against it.
That's a prime example of how NGOs can use both monitoring, sometimes called naming and shaming, and collaboration to hold MNCs accountable and encourage more consistent behavior. They can be powerful allies or formidable foes.
So with all these layers of complexity, what does this mean for companies operating in our globalized world? Can they really afford to pick and choose where their values apply?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
It really makes you think. Speaking of things that make you think, don't forget to stick around for the debut of our first ever paper song. It might even be about today's topic, who knows?
It's a question worth pondering. Can they really pick and choose? Because inconsistency has consequences. Imagine finding out a company acts completely differently in another country.
Right.
That could be a PR nightmare.
It totally would. But it's not just about PR, is it? It feels deeper than that. Like, it raises questions about a company's core values, their integrity. Are they truly committed to these social issues, or are they just playing to different audiences?
Exactly. It cuts to the heart of authenticity. And employees are noticing this too, especially younger generations. They're really passionate about social justice and expect their employers to, walk the walk.
Right. Employee activism is on the rise. Companies can't just talk the talk anymore. If they come across as hypocritical or inconsistent, they risk alienating their workforce. It really highlights how different this kind of activism is compared to traditional CSR. The stakes are higher, the lines are blurrier, and the potential for backlash is enormous.
Couldn't agree more. Navigating this new landscape demands a whole new set of skills and strategies. The old CSR playbook won't cut it anymore. Companies need to be more strategic, more transparent, and above all, more authentic in their approach.
So how can they do that? What are some practical steps companies can take to ensure they're being consistent and authentic in their sociopolitical activism?
The first step is crystal clear. Define those core values and principles. What does the organization truly stand for? Which issues will they speak out on? And crucially, why? And these values can't just be empty words on a website. They need to be woven into the very fabric of the company, their culture, their decision-making processes, every single action they take.
So it's about aligning actions with words, right? Walking the walk, not just talking the talk. But I imagine that gets really complicated for multinational corporations operating in so many different cultural contexts. What works in one place might not work in another.
Absolutely. That's the challenge of institutional complexity we discussed earlier. How do you reconcile those potentially conflicting values across different countries?
It sounds like a constant balancing act. How do they even begin to figure that out?
It takes careful consideration, open dialogue, and a willingness to adapt. And sometimes it means making tough choices, knowing you can't please everyone. Transparency becomes absolutely vital in those moments.
That makes sense. Being upfront about their values, their decision-making process, and the challenges they face. If they try to hide those tough choices, it's just going to backfire, right? People will find out eventually.
Transparency is non-negotiable in today's world. And it's not just about avoiding backlash. It's about building trust with stakeholders, customers, employees, the community. When people understand where a company is coming from and why they're making the choices they're making, they're more likely to respect those choices, even if they don't agree with them completely.
It's about building that understanding and respect. So transparency, authenticity, a clear set of values. Those are the essential ingredients for navigating this complex world of sociopolitical activism. But are there any specific strategies or approaches that companies are using to put these principles into action? I'm really curious to hear about some real-world examples.
There are some really fascinating approaches emerging, and they all hinge on collaboration. One we're seeing is localized activism.
Localized activism? That sounds intriguing. What does that look like in practice?
Instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, it's about tailoring activism efforts to each country's specific cultural and political context. Take those core values and find creative ways to express them authentically, but in a way that resonates with the local audience.
So it's about being true to themselves while also being sensitive to the nuances of each market.
Yeah.
It seems like that would require a deep understanding of the local landscape.
Absolutely. That's where partnerships come in. We're seeing companies partnering with local organizations and individuals who have that on-the-ground expertise. It could be providing financial support to local NGOs working on the front lines of a specific issue, offering pro bono consulting services, or collaborating on public awareness campaigns.
So it's not just writing a check. It's about rolling up their sleeves and working hand in hand with local communities. It feels like a much more genuine and impactful way to make a difference.
Exactly. And there are several benefits to this approach. Firstly, it ensures their efforts are truly relevant to the local context, maximizing their potential for impact. Secondly, it helps build stronger relationships with local stakeholders, showing a willingness to listen and understand their needs. And thirdly, it can mitigate the risk of backlash because it demonstrates genuine investment in making a positive difference in that community, not just imposing values from the outside.
I love that. A true win-win-win. Are there any other approaches that are gaining traction?
Another exciting trend is employee-driven activism.
Okay, that piques my interest. How does that work?
It's about recognizing the power and passion of employees and empowering them to take the lead on activism efforts. Companies are realizing that their employees are their greatest asset. When it comes to authentically engaging in sociopolitical activism, they're the ones closest to the issues, the ones with a genuine desire to make a difference.
That makes sense. They can speak from personal experience and connect with stakeholders in a way that feels more genuine and relatable.
Precisely. And companies are finding different ways to support this. Some create internal platforms for employees to share their perspectives, connect with like-minded colleagues, and organize around issues they care about. Others provide paid time off for volunteering or match employee donations to nonprofit organizations. Some even give employees a voice in deciding which causes the company should support financially or otherwise.
Wow. That's incredible. It's a real commitment to empowering employees and trusting them to be like ambassadors for the company's values. It seems like that would be a powerful way to boost employee engagement and loyalty too.
It absolutely does. And it taps into the creativity and passion of the workforce, leading to more innovative and impactful activism initiatives.
So we've got localized activism and employee-driven activism. Any other trends we should have on our radar?
The final trend we'll discuss is collaborative activism, a recognition that no single company can solve these complex social issues alone. It requires collaboration across sectors, across industries, and across borders.
I see a theme emerging here. Collaboration. And it makes sense, right? These are big challenges that require a collective effort.
Exactly. And we're seeing this play out in really inspiring ways. Companies are joining forces with each other, with NGOs, with governments, and even with competitors to tackle issues that affect everyone.
Wait, even competitors are coming together for a common cause. I love that.
It's happening more and more. These collaborations are fueling some amazing initiatives. We're seeing companies pooling resources to fund research and development for climate change solutions, working together to improve working conditions in global supply chains, and partnering with governments and NGOs to provide education and job training in underserved communities.
It's incredible to see what they can accomplish when they combine their expertise, resources, and influence. By working together, they can create change on a much larger scale than any one company could manage alone.
Absolutely. And that spirit of collaboration offers a powerful antidote to the cynicism and division that often surround these complex issues. It's a reason to be optimistic about the future.
It definitely gives me hope. It's inspiring to see companies step up and work together to make the world a better place. So we've covered a lot of ground today. The challenges of institutional complexity, the need for transparency and authenticity, and these exciting new approaches to sociopolitical activism. What are some key takeaways you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that sociopolitical activism is no longer optional for companies. It's becoming a fundamental part of doing business in the 21st century. And it goes beyond managing risks or protecting reputation. It's about creating real, lasting value for shareholders, employees, customers, and for society as a whole.
It sounds like companies that embrace this new reality and approach activism in a strategic, authentic, and collaborative way will be the ones that thrive in the long run.
I couldn't agree more.
And on that note, I think it's time for the grand debut of our very first paper song.
Yeah.
You guys ready for this? Before we unleash this musical masterpiece on the world, I have to give a shout out to our resident musical genius, who somehow managed to turn a dense research article about sociopolitical activism into a catchy tune. Seriously, you're a wizard.
You're too kind. It was actually a lot of fun. I've always loved finding creative ways to communicate complex ideas, and music is such a powerful medium for doing that.
Well, you've definitely outdone yourself this time. I have a feeling we've got a hit on our hands. Move over, Taylor Swift. But in all seriousness, it's such a clever and engaging way to sum up all the complexities of this topic. I bet our listeners are going to be humming this tune all day long, and hopefully it'll make them think more critically about the role companies play in shaping our world and how we can all hold them accountable for acting consistently with their values. Are you ready to share this masterpiece with the world?
Let's do it, singing. Multinational corporations, they're all over the map trying to navigate the world where values often clash. From home to host, they're under the glass. Can they take a stand, or will their image crash? Singing. Institutional complexity, a 3-level game. Within a country, citizens and leaders stake their claim. Between countries, norms and laws ain't the same. Beyond borders, global forces whisper their name. Singing. Consistency's the goal, but the path ain't always clear. When stakeholders disagree, the stakes are high, my dear. Transparency and action, that's what we hold dear. Building trust and making a difference, year after year. Singing. So let's raise our voices, let's sing a brand new song about companies taking a stand where it's right or wrong. Working together, we can make things strong. Building a future where justice and fairness belong.
Wow, that was amazing. I told you guys you wouldn't want to miss it. What did you think?
I hope it got the message across.
It did. And more importantly, it was incredibly catchy. But on a serious note, you've given us so much to think about today. It's clear that sociopolitical activism is a complex and evolving landscape for companies. There's no easy answer, but transparency, authenticity, and collaboration seem to be key ingredients for navigating this new terrain. What do you think is the most important thing for companies to remember as they grapple with these issues?
I think it boils down to this. Companies need to understand that their actions speak louder than words. In today's world, stakeholders are savvy. They can spot hypocrisy from a mile away. Companies need to be prepared to back up their words with consistent actions, even when it's difficult, even when it's unpopular.
That's such a powerful point. It's not enough to just say the right things anymore. You have to live your values every single day in every decision you make and every market you operate in. So what can our listeners do? How can they be more informed and engaged in holding companies accountable?
First, be aware. Pay attention to what companies are saying and doing. Look beyond the headlines and marketing campaigns. Dig deeper, do your research, and see if their actions align with their words. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Challenge inconsistencies and demand better.
And remember, as consumers, employees, and citizens, we have power.
We can choose to support companies that align with our values and hold those who don't accountable through our purchasing decisions, our voices, and our actions.
That's a great reminder for all of us. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's all commit to being more conscious consumers, more engaged citizens, and more vocal advocates for the change we want to see in the world. Thank you for joining us this incredible journey, and a huge thanks again to our resident expert for sharing your wisdom and musical talents with us. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going. And don't forget to subscribe to Revise and Resubmit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for more captivating deep dives like this one. And if you're enjoying the show and want to support us in creating more insightful content, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Every contribution helps us continue this journey of exploration and discovery. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep questioning, and keep revising and resubmitting.
Multinationals across the border, big decisions, storm gets colder. At home they stand, voices bold, but a broad silence unfolds. Corporate bros take a stand, or stay quiet where they land. Hostland voices run so tight, do they fight in their light? One foot here, one foot there, same old issue, do they care? Stand for justice, speak so loud, but in some lands they hush the crowd. The laws, the norms, the pressure high. One man's truth, another's lie. Can they hold to values true, or does the market shape their view? The laws, the norms, the pressure high. One man's truth, another's lie. Can they hold to values true, or does the market shape their view? Do they change with every tide, or hold their heads with global pride? Corporate roots take a stand, or stay quiet where they land. Hostline voices rule so tight, do they fight or dim their light? One foot here, one foot there. Same old issue, do they care? Stand for justice, speak so loud, but in some lands they hush the crowd. Ooh, until they lie. Ooh, until they find where they lie. Ooh, one foot here, one foot there. Same old issue, do they care? Stand bold, issue, do they loud, but in some lands they hush the crowd. One foot here, one foot there. Same old issue, do they care? Do they care? Do they care? Stand bold, issue, do they care?